This story is titled, My Sister's Best Friend Accused Me of Getting Her Pregnant, even though I haven't met her in my life and refused a DNA test, so I exposed her lies and ruined her whole life. Hi everyone! Before we dive in, a quick favor. If you enjoy content like this, please hit the subscribe button. It's free, supports the channel, and make sure you never miss out on amazing videos. Alright, let's get started. Hey folks, I've got an insane situation that needs to get unpacked in here because it's been one hell of a week. I was living totally normal when my life decided to flip upside down. Alright, so this whole mess kicked off about a week ago when my sister Alyssa started blowing up my phone. We've always been close, but this time, her texts and calls weren't the usual checking up kind of thing. Instead, she was furious, demanding to know why I wasn't taking responsibility for something I had no idea about. Apparently, her college roommate and best friend, Chloe, 20 female, had posted on Instagram claiming I, her best friend's older brother, got her pregnant. I checked the post, and it was complete, with pictures of positive pregnancy tests, and the girl even tagged me in the post for good measure. I was completely floored. Like, what kind of alternate reality was this? Well, here's the thing. I've never even met that damn Chloe in person. The closest we've ever come to interacting is me seeing her on a FaceTime call with Alyssa during holidays, or hearing Alyssa talk about her now and then. That's it. I've never spoken to her directly, let alone been in the same room with her. So, you can imagine my shock when Alyssa was treating this like an open and shut case of me being a deadbeat. What made things worse is that Alyssa wasn't just upset. She was convinced Chloe was telling the truth. She kept going on about how Chloe wouldn't lie about something like this, and how it was my responsibility to step up. Meanwhile, I was trying to wrap my head around the whole situation. How do you even begin to respond when someone accuses you of something so far out there? I tried telling her that Chloe was lying, that I'd never even spoken to her, but Alyssa wasn't buying it. Things escalated quickly. Alyssa said if I didn't own up and help Chloe financially, she'd tell our parents everything. Now, I don't have a bad relationship with my parents, but they're the type to overreact, especially to something like this. The idea of them finding out about this mess, especially when it's not even true, wasn't something I wanted to do. But what was I supposed to do? Give in to Alyssa and Chloe's demands for something I didn't do? The more I thought about it, the more frustrated I got. Chloe didn't just make up a little lie, she created a whole narrative. According to Alyssa, Chloe claimed I'd been messaging her secretly on Instagram for months, then flew out to meet her a couple of times. She said we'd hooked up during those secret visits, and that now, after finding out she was pregnant, I was ghosting her. She even added this bizarre detail about me unsending all my messages so no one could prove we'd been talking. It was completely made up, obviously. I'd never messaged Chloe, never flown to see her, and didn't even follow her on Instagram. None of it made sense. But somehow, Alyssa believed every word. So I suggested the first thing that came up into my mind in that chaos. A paternity test to clear things up, but Alyssa shot it down, saying Chloe refused because it was an insult to her integrity. Seriously? If she was so confident I was the father, wouldn't she want to prove it? The whole thing just didn't add up. But Alyssa made it sound like I was the unreasonable one for even suggesting it. I kept replaying it all in my head, trying to figure out where this even started. Alyssa and I had always been close, so seeing her take Chloe's side so quickly was like a slap in the face. She wasn't just siding with Chloe, she was going all in. She texted me nonstop, saying things like, "You need to step up," and "Chloe's dealing with enough without you making it worse." It didn't matter how many times I said I wasn't involved, she just wouldn't hear me out. By now, I felt completely stuck. No matter what I said, Alyssa was convinced I was guilty. And the worst part, she was threatening to tell our parents. They're old school, and while I was sure they'd eventually believe me, the stress and chaos it would bring weren't something I wanted to deal with. I needed to find a way to prove my innocence without dragging everyone else into this mess. But how could I do that when Chloe wouldn't even agree to a paternity test? By the end of the day, I was drained. Mentally, emotionally, everything. I'd spent hours arguing with Alyssa, trying to get her to see reason, but it was like talking to a wall. Every time I pushed back, she'd come at me harder, saying I was dodging responsibility and disrespecting Chloe. Meanwhile, I was stuck wondering how someone could even pull off a lie this big and actually make it stick. That night, I sat down to figure out my next move. Confronting Chloe felt like a trap, and getting my parents involved would just add more fuel to the fire. But doing nothing wasn't an option either. I felt like I was tiptoeing on the edge of a cliff, knowing one wrong move could send everything crashing down. At this point, all I know is that I have to find a way to clear my name. But how do you prove you didn't do something when there's no evidence either way? It feels impossible. And the worst part of all? The person pushing hardest against me is my own sister. The one person I thought would have my back in something like this is the one leading the charge. Tell me guys, what do you think I should do? Update 1. Hey guys, I wanted to give you an update since things have escalated, and honestly, I have no idea where this is heading. So the next morning, after being declared a father without my knowledge, I woke up to even more chaos. I had a bunch of notifications from Instagram and texts from random numbers. Apparently, Chloe's post tagging me had picked up steam overnight. There were dozens of comments on it now, many from people I didn't even know. Some were offering her support, saying things like, "Stay strong, mama," and "You don't need him, girl." Others were tearing me apart, calling me all sorts of names and accusing me of abandoning her. It wasn't just her followers, though. My own Instagram had become a battleground. People were tagging me in posts, stories, and comments, demanding answers. Some of Alyssa's friends, who I'd barely spoken to in my life, jumped in to say how disgusted they were with me. One of them even DM'd me, writing this long paragraph about how men like me ruin lives, and that I'd better step up before it was too late. I couldn't believe how quickly everything had spiraled. This wasn't just some petty accusation anymore. Chloe had effectively declared war on me. And the worst part? I couldn't even defend myself properly because I didn't have any proof. All I could do was tell the truth. But when someone's already painted you as the bad guy, no one wants to hear your side. Things got even worse when I saw that Alyssa had joined in on the action. She wasn't just commenting on Chloe's post. She was making her own. She posted a story about family betrayal and how disappointed she was in certain people, obviously aimed at me. She also started tagging me in posts where she shared vague quotes like, "Sometimes people show you who they really are," and "Blood isn't thicker than accountability." It was a full-on public shaming campaign, and I felt completely helpless. I wasn't the type to air my personal business online, so the idea of clapping back or posting a long defense didn't sit right with me. Plus, even if I did, it wasn't like I had anything concrete to back me up. All I had was my word against Chloe's, and she was already running the narrative. Throughout the day, I kept getting texts and calls. A few friends called me, asking what was going on. Most of them believed me when I explained the situation, but even they admitted it looked bad from the outside. "You need to clear this up," one of them said. "If you don't, it's just going to keep growing." But how was I supposed to clear it up when the only person who could prove I wasn't involved, Chloe, was refusing to get a paternity test? It felt like I was trapped in a nightmare where the truth didn't matter. By the afternoon, the stress was starting to get to me. I couldn't focus on anything because my phone kept lighting up with notifications. People I hadn't spoken to in years were messaging me, asking if it was true. Some were supportive, but most were nosy or outright judgmental. At one point, I decided to block Chloe and Alyssa on Instagram, hoping that would stop the flood of messages. It didn't. Chloe kept posting updates, tagging me in them, and people kept finding ways to reach me. It was relentless. Then Alyssa sent me a long text. She accused me of being cowardly for blocking them, and said it was just further proof that I was guilty. She said things like, "If you had nothing to hide, you wouldn't be running from this," and "The least you can do is talk to Chloe directly and work something out." That last part really got under my skin. Work something out? What was there to work out when I hadn't done anything? The fact that Alyssa still couldn't see how ridiculous this all was made me feel like I didn't even know her anymore. She wasn't just defending Chloe. She was going out of her way to make me look worse, although she knew I've never met her in person. What really sent me over the edge, though, was when I found out Chloe had started posting screenshots. Not of our supposed conversations, because those didn't exist, but of random stuff like her pregnancy tests, doctor's appointments, and vague texts that didn't even involve me. She captioned them with things like, "This is what I'm dealing with while he hides," and "Some people think they can erase their mistakes, but life doesn't work that way." People ate it up. The comments kept rolling in, and more people were tagging me in their posts and stories. It felt like I was being publicly dragged for something I had no part in. By the end of the day, I couldn't take it anymore. I called Alyssa, hoping to talk some sense into her. It didn't go well. She started yelling at me, saying Chloe was a good person who didn't deserve to be treated like this. I told her to stop and think about how insane this all sounded. How could I possibly be the father when I'd never even met Chloe in person? But Alyssa just kept doubling down, saying things like, "You're just mad because you got caught," and "She doesn't need to lie about something like this." I ended up hanging up on her because it was clear we weren't getting anywhere. But even after the call, I couldn't shake the anger and frustration. Alyssa was supposed to have my back, but instead, she was leading the charge against me. That night, I went through Chloe's Instagram again, trying to figure out why she'd chosen me as her target. Was it because I had a stable job? Because I was Alyssa's brother and an easy person to reach? Or was it just random bad luck? Whatever the reason, it didn't change the fact that she'd turned my life into a disaster. I knew I couldn't just let this slide, but I also didn't know how to fight back without making things worse. If I lashed out online, it would only add fuel to the fire. If I stayed quiet, people would keep assuming I was guilty. Either way, Chloe was winning, and I was stuck in the middle of a storm I didn't create. My head is spinning. The stress of it all is overwhelming, and I can't see a way out. All I know is that I needed to find some kind of proof, something that would show everyone the truth. But at this moment, it feels like I'm completely alone in this fight. That's why I'm posting in here at 3 a.m. I can differently use some outside perspective. Update 2. Okay guys, just when I thought this mess couldn't get any weirder, it did. But at least things are starting to get a bit clearer now. The other morning, I woke up to an unexpected DM on Instagram from some guy named Brandon. Safe to say, I wasn't ready for what he had to say. At first, I thought it was just another random person jumping into the mess, but his message was different. He introduced himself as Chloe's ex-boyfriend and said he had something important to tell me. Honestly, I didn't know if I could trust him. This whole situation had me paranoid about everyone involved, and I wasn't in the mood for more drama, but I wanted to hear him out. Brandon explained that he and Chloe had been together for 6 years, all through high school and into college. They broke up recently, and it wasn't an amicable split. According to him, the relationship ended because Chloe cheated on him with some guy she met on a dating app. He said he'd found out through mutual friends, confronted her, and she admitted it. That was the end of their relationship. Here's where it got interesting. Brandon said Chloe tried to pull the same stunt on him just a few weeks ago. After they broke up, she called him and told him she was pregnant. She insisted the baby was his and started pressuring him to propose to her. She even threw in this whole spiel about how they could make it work, how they owed it to the baby to be a family, and so on. Brandon told me he didn't believe her. He knew she'd cheated and had no idea how many other guys were in the picture. He said he told her flat out to get a paternity test before he even considered having that conversation. Chloe refused, saying it was demeaning and accusing him of not trusting her. That's when he officially cut ties and told her he wanted nothing to do with her. The way Brandon described it, it sounded like Chloe was grasping at straws. After he shut her down, she must have realized she didn't have a backup plan. So, when Brandon was out of the picture, she started looking for someone else to pin the pregnancy on. And that's where I came in. Brandon's theory was that Chloe picked me because I was an easy target. I'm stable, I have a decent job, and I'm her best friend's brother. That gave her a connection to me that she could use to make her story more believable. Plus, according to Brandon, Chloe had mentioned me a few times during their relationship. Apparently, she thought I was cute and had joked about what it would be like to date me. It was weird hearing that, but it made sense in a twisted way. Chloe wasn't just lying for the sake of lying. She'd carefully chosen her target. And now, thanks to her scheming, my life was in complete disarray. Brandon said he reached out because he felt bad for me. He'd seen Chloe's Instagram posts and knew she was lying. He figured I was going through the same thing he did and wanted to help. I didn't know whether to be grateful or angry. On one hand, I appreciated that someone was finally on my side. On the other hand, it pissed me off that Chloe had done this to someone else and was now dragging me into it. Brandon also sent me screenshots of their conversations from when she accused him of being the father. The messages were almost identical to what Alyssa had described Chloe saying about me. Claims about ghosting, accusations of erasing messages, and refusing to step up. It was like she had a script she was following, tweaking it just enough to fit her new target. The more I read, the angrier I got. That Chloe was weaponizing her situation to manipulate people. She wasn't scared or desperate. She was calculating. After going through everything Brandon sent me, I asked him what he thought I should do. He said the only reason he didn't blow the whole thing up when it happened to him was because he still cared about Chloe, even after what she did. But he wasn't emotionally tied to this anymore, so he told me to take whatever steps I needed to protect myself. That's when I got an idea. If Chloe was refusing to get a paternity test, maybe I could use Brandon's story to force her hand. I asked him if he'd be willing to share his side with Alyssa or even Chloe's parents. He hesitated at first, but eventually agreed. He said he didn't want to get involved directly, but he was fine with me sharing the screenshots if it helped clear my name. Armed with Brandon's evidence, I felt like I finally had something solid to work with. It wasn't proof that I wasn't involved, but it was proof that Chloe had done this before. If nothing else, it showed that her story wasn't as airtight as she made it seem. I spent the rest of the day organizing everything: Brandon's messages, the screenshots, and a timeline of events. I wanted to make sure I had all my facts straight before confronting Alyssa or anyone else. That night, I sat down and drafted a message to Alyssa. I explained everything Brandon had told me and attached the screenshots as proof. I kept it short and to the point, focusing on the facts instead of getting emotional. Then, I hit send and waited. I didn't hear back from Alyssa immediately, which wasn't surprising. I figured she'd need time to process everything, but I hoped this would finally make her see the truth. If she couldn't believe me, maybe she'd believe someone who had been in the exact same position. As I sat there, a whirlwind of emotions hit me, relieved to finally have some solid proof on my side, yet frustrated that things had spiraled this far. None of this should have happened, and while Brandon's help was a step forward, I knew the road ahead was still going to be messy. Honestly, I felt a glimmer of hope, but I also knew the road ahead was going to be rough. The next morning, I woke up to a response from Alyssa. Her reply was frustratingly short and dismissive. She claimed the screenshots from Brandon didn't prove anything because Chloe had already told her he was a toxic ex who was just trying to ruin her life. Then she hit me with the classic, "Why would Chloe lie? What does she have to gain?" That question nearly made me toss my phone across the room. At this point, it was obvious Alyssa wasn't going to change her mind. She was completely sold on Chloe's story, and no amount of evidence or logic was going to convince her otherwise. I realized then that if I wanted to get anywhere, I had to bypass Alyssa entirely. The only people left who might be able to rein Chloe in were her parents. I wasn't thrilled about the idea. I'd never spoken to Chloe's parents, and from what Brandon had told me, they weren't exactly the warm and fuzzy type. Still, it felt like the only option I had left. If Chloe wasn't going to tell the truth and Alyssa was determined to back her up, then maybe her parents could force her hand. I got Chloe's mom's contact info from Brandon, along with a heads up that her parents were strict and old school. "They're intense," he'd said. I wasn't sure what that meant exactly, but I figured it couldn't hurt to try. I spent the morning putting together everything I wanted to say. I wrote out a timeline of events, compiled all the screenshots Brandon had sent me, and rehearsed how I'd explain the situation. I didn't want to come across as aggressive or emotional. I just wanted to be clear and factual. Around lunchtime, I finally worked up the nerve to call. Chloe's mom answered on the second ring. She sounded polite but wary, like she couldn't figure out why her daughter's roommate's brother was calling her. I introduced myself and got straight to the point, explaining that Chloe had been accusing me of being the father of her baby, but refusing to get a paternity test. I also told her about Brandon, and how he'd gone through a nearly identical situation with Chloe just weeks earlier. I explained that Brandon had proof Chloe was lying, and I offered to send her the screenshots if she wanted to see them. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When Chloe's mom finally spoke, her tone had shifted completely. She said she had no idea any of this was happening and apologized for the stress it had caused me. She asked me to send her everything I had, screenshots, timelines, anything that could help her understand what was going on. I agreed, and as soon as we hung up, I forwarded her the email I'd prepared. An hour later, Chloe's mom called me back. This time, she sounded livid, not at me, but at Chloe. She said she'd had no clue her daughter was capable of something like this, and assured me they'd be handling it immediately. She apologized again for the trouble, and promised to keep me updated. I hung up feeling a mix of relief and unease. It felt good to finally have someone on my side who could actually do something about this. But still, I had no idea how Chloe or Alyssa would react once they found out I'd gone to her parents. The next day, Chloe's parents called me again. They'd spoken to Chloe and confirmed that she'd lied about me being the father. They apologized profusely for the trouble she'd caused, and said they were taking steps to address her behavior. Chloe was back home with them and wouldn't be returning to college for the foreseeable future. They also mentioned that Chloe had tried to shift the blame onto Brandon and me, claiming we were ganging up on her to make her look bad. Thankfully, her parents weren't buying it. They said they were deeply disappointed in her and planned to cut her off financially, unless she got her act together. Hearing that was satisfying in a way, but it also felt surreal. Just a week ago, I was minding my own business, and now I was at the center of this ridiculous drama. It was like living in some weird alternate reality. By the end of the day, I felt like things were finally starting to settle. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over yet. Alyssa wasn't the type to let things go. I'm sure when she finds out she won't stay silent. And Chloe had already proven she was willing to go to extreme lengths to get what she wanted. For now, though, I was just grateful to have some breathing room. I don't know what the future held, but I hope this is the beginning of the end of this nightmare. Update 3. Hi again. Remember the hope I ended my last update with? It only lasted about 24 hours. The next morning, Alyssa showed up unannounced at my apartment. She was still fuming. The first words out of her mouth were, "I can't believe you called Chloe's parents. Do you even care about anyone but yourself?" I didn't even let her inside. I stood in the doorway and told her flat out that I wasn't going to have this conversation again. I'd done what I had to do to clear my name, and if she couldn't understand that, then she needed to leave. But of course, Alyssa wasn't going to back down that easily. She accused me of ruining Chloe's life, saying she'd been forced to leave school, and now her parents were threatening to cut her off financially. Apparently, Chloe had confessed to lying about me being the father, but framed it as a desperate move because she was scared and didn't know how to handle the situation. I told Alyssa that Chloe brought this on herself. If she hadn't lied about me, none of this would have happened, but Alyssa didn't want to hear it. She said I should have just let it blow over instead of escalating things by going to Chloe's parents. She kept repeating the same lines about how I overreacted and made things worse for everyone involved. At one point, she even said, "You've completely destroyed any chance Chloe had of fixing her life. Do you even feel bad about what you've done?" That was the final straw for me. I told Alyssa that if she couldn't see how messed up this whole situation was, how Chloe's actions had hurt not just me, but also Brandon and even her own parents, then maybe she wasn't as rational as I thought she was. Alyssa got absolutely mad and left after that, slamming the door behind her. I figured that was the end of it, at least for the day. But later that evening, I got a call from my mom. Alyssa had gone straight to our parents and spun the whole thing to make me look like the villain. She told them I'd gone after Chloe and ruined her life, leaving out the part where Chloe lied about me being the father of her baby. My mom was upset, asking why I hadn't come to her and my dad first, before taking things into my own hands. I spent the next hour explaining the entire situation from start to finish. How Chloe lied, how she refused a paternity test, how Alyssa sided with her without any proof, and how Brandon's story confirmed Chloe was a serial liar. My mom listened quietly, but I could tell she was overwhelmed. She's not great with conflict, and this was way more drama than she's used to dealing with. My dad, on the other hand, was on the right side. When he got on the phone, he said he couldn't believe Alyssa had been supporting someone who lied about something so serious. He was especially angry that she'd kept all of this from them until now. He told me he was going to have a serious talk with Alyssa, and that he wouldn't tolerate this kind of behavior in our family. That gave me a sense of relief. The next day, Alyssa called me, furious as always. She said our parents had chewed her out for siding with Chloe and threatened to stop paying for her college if she didn't apologize to me and cut ties with Chloe completely. Alyssa accused me of turning our parents against her and said I was just trying to ruin her life too. I told her, "You're the one who dragged them into this, not me. If you can't deal with the consequences of your actions, that's not my problem." That didn't go over well. She started yelling about how I was selfish and vindictive, and I ended up hanging up on her. Over the next few days, things between Alyssa and our parents went from bad to worse. My dad was adamant that Alyssa needed to take responsibility for her action, while my mom was caught in the middle, trying to keep the peace. Alyssa refused to apologize to me or even acknowledge that she'd been wrong to believe Chloe. Instead, she doubled down, saying she was just trying to support a friend in need and didn't understand why everyone was ganging up on her. At one point, my dad told Alyssa that if she didn't cut ties with Chloe and apologize to me by the end of the week, they'd stop paying her tuition. Alyssa called me immediately after that, blaming me for everything. She said I was tearing the family apart and that I should have just kept my mouth shut instead of escalating things. I didn't even argue with her this time. I just told her that I wasn't going to feel bad for standing up for myself and that she needed to take a hard look at who she was really supporting. Chloe lied to you, to me, and to everyone else. Stop being a fool, I said. If you can't see that, then I don't know what else to say to you. By the end of the week, Alyssa still hadn't apologized. True to their word, my parents cut her off financially, exactly like what happened to her friend that she supports. She called me one last time, crying and begging me to talk to our parents on her behalf. She said she couldn't afford to stay in school without their help, and that she didn't want to lose everything over one mistake. I told her that I wasn't the one she needed to apologize to. It was our parents. They were the ones making the decision, not me. But Alyssa refused to see it that way. She kept saying I was the one who started all of this, and that it was my fault her life was falling apart. After that call, I decided to block Alyssa's number. I couldn't keep dealing with her constant blame and refusal to take accountability. As much as it hurt to cut her off, I knew it was the only way to protect my own mental health. In the weeks that followed, my parents and I grew closer. The whole ordeal had been stressful, but it also made us realize how important it was to stick together and support each other. My dad even reached out to Brandon to thank him for coming forward with his story. As for Alyssa, I haven't heard from her since that last phone call. My parents tried reaching out a couple of times, but she didn't respond. I don't know if she's still in touch with Chloe or what she's doing now, but I hope she eventually realizes how toxic that friendship was. I feel like I've done everything I could to set the record straight. Chloe's lies nearly destroyed my life, and Alyssa's blind loyalty to her made it even worse. If cutting ties with both of them is what it takes to move on, then so be it. For now, I'm just focused on rebuilding my life and leaving this nightmare behind me. If I heard anything new about Alyssa, I'll post an update. Final update. Hey guys, it's been about 3 weeks since everything with Alyssa and Chloe finally blew up. Things have been quieter, but not exactly peaceful. Even though Alyssa and I aren't speaking, her absence still lingers. I never thought we'd reach a point where our relationship would be this fractured, but here we are. A couple of days after Alyssa's meltdown, my parents gave me an update. Apparently, Alyssa had gone back to school, but she'd been forced to take out a student loan to cover her tuition and living expenses. My dad said she wasn't responding to their calls or texts anymore, which didn't surprise me. Knowing Alyssa, she's probably trying to prove a point by cutting them off completely. Part of me feels bad for her. I know taking out loans and juggling work while in college isn't easy, but at the same time, she made her choice. She decided to stand by Chloe even after the truth came out, and now she's dealing with the consequences. As for Chloe, I haven't heard a single word from her. According to Brandon, who's been keeping tabs on the situation, Chloe's parents have her on lockdown. She's back home and isn't allowed to go anywhere unless it's for something important, like a doctor's appointment. Brandon also mentioned that her parents are still furious with her for lying, but they're letting her stay under their roof as long as she follows their rules. Apparently, Chloe's still trying to frame herself as a victim. She's telling people she only lied about me because she was scared and didn't know how to handle the situation. She's conveniently leaving out the part where she refused to take a paternity test and tried to manipulate multiple people into taking responsibility for her pregnancy. The craziest part? Chloe still hasn't figured out who the actual father is. From what Brandon told me, she's been too afraid to contact the guy she hooked up with on the dating app, and she's still refusing to get a paternity test. It's like she's just waiting for the problem to magically solve itself. I've been trying to move on from all of this, but it's been tough. Even though the accusations have stopped, the damage they caused hasn't completely gone away. Some people who saw Chloe's Instagram posts still think there's some truth to her story, even though she's admitted she lied. Social media doesn't come with a rewind button, and once something's out there, it sticks. My parents and I have grown closer in the wake of all this. They've been checking in on me more often, and we've even started having weekly dinners together. It's comforting to have their support, especially after feeling so isolated when everything was spiraling out of control. Last week, my mom brought up Alyssa again during one of our dinners. She said she misses her and wishes things hadn't escalated to the point where she felt the need to cut herself off from the family. My dad, on the other hand, is still angry. He thinks Alyssa needs to learn the hard way that actions have consequences. For me, I feel like it's not my responsibility to reach out to Alyssa. She's the one who chose to believe Chloe over me, even when the truth was staring her in the face. Until she's ready to admit she was wrong, I don't see how we can move forward. The hardest part of all this has been accepting that the relationship I had with my sister might never be the same. We were close growing up, and I always thought we'd have each other's backs no matter what. But this whole ordeal has shown me a side of her I didn't know existed, a side that values loyalty to friends over family, even when the friend is blatantly in the wrong. If there's one silver lining to this mess, it's that it's forced me to reevaluate my relationships. I've realized that some people, even the ones you think you're closest to, won't always have your back when it matters. It's a hard pill to swallow, but it's better to know the truth than to keep living in ignorance. As for what's next, I'm taking things one day at a time. My main focus is on rebuilding my life and surrounding myself with people who genuinely care about me. I'm not holding out hope for an apology from Alyssa or Chloe, but I've accepted that I can't control their action, only my own. This year for me in general has been messy, painful, and exhausting, but I'm ready to move forward. I've done what I can to clear my name, and now it's up to the people involved to deal with the fallout. All I can do is keep moving forward and hope for better days ahead. Thank you all for the comments and support. It really meant a lot to me and genuinely helped.